Hello everyone, this is Remnice from 40k Theories, and welcome to the May 2020 edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Now, let's jump into the questions. Voice of the Emperor asks, how is Krieg ruled these days, with the Council of Autocrats being long dead? I don't think it's been officially touched up upon, but if I had to guess, I'd say a new planetary governor was installed by the Imperium following the events of the rebellion. Would you ever consider doing a Homebrew of the Week video on the Angry Marines chapter? Only if the original creator actually submitted it themselves. Ivor Biggin asks, oh, it's quite a bloody long one, isn't it? Very verbose. Let's see. Right. How do you get a new idea for a theory video, and once you come up with an idea, where do you start? Well, there's no real fixed way of coming up with a theory video. Sometimes, something interesting will come up in a novel or a codex or whatnot, which will inspire me to actually look more into it. Sometimes a topic gets suggested by a fan, and whenever I start researching, I'll tend to go for the codex first to see if there's anything explaining it. I do have a vast library of codices, going from like 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 2nd. I still need to complete my 3rd and 1st edition list though, that being said. It really does depend on the topic in question. There is no definitive answer for this. Sorry to disappoint you. As I said, it just purely depends on the topic in question and where the best source of information would likely to be. I will sometimes check sites like Lexicanum, because they actually cite sources in regards to where certain things can be, so if I've heard something in regards to a particular character, I'll look it up, check the source, and then double check the source listed, which is the best way of going about it. But yeah, aside from that, it can come from anywhere, and I can start from anywhere. Do you ever purchase Warhammer books for your own entertainment, or do you simply read from your vast collection of books you have amassed for research purposes? Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Chief Surgeon asks, what are your thoughts on the Psychic Awakening Pariah book? At the time of recording, that's not actually been released yet, though I am excited at the fact we are getting Ephrael Stern and having a model for Ephrael Stern, so that is good. But aside from that, indifference over. Evil Scotsman asks, has there ever been a Thousand Son that has gone rogue and aided the Loyalists either directly or indirectly? Yes, Raviel Avda. He sided with the White Scars during the Horus Heresy and helped them against the traitor legions. In more recent years, you could argue in regards to that 1000 Son sorcerer who possessed Njal Stormcaller of the Space Wolves after he fell asleep in his rocking chair like an old granddad. Yeah, that book was weird. Asbates asks, who would be your top 3 favourite normal power level characters in 40k and why? A Space Marine is above normal power level. Right, so basically human characters. Okay, I'd go for Commissar Yarrick just because it's Commissar Yarrick, He beat the shit out of an orc, he scares the orcs to death, he's got the respect of Ghazghkull Fracka, and he's replaced his arm with a goddamn orc power claw. Yeah, Yarrick's definitely on there. Who else? I go for Cal Jericho, just because, you gotta have a soft spot for the swashbuckling roguish types. And, sticking with Necromunda, I'd go for Gore Halfhorn, because Gore Halfhorn is a beastman, and beastmen are awesome. Brent Feast asks, are there any World Eater books that you're aware of that won't leave me an emotional wreck of a human being? Tricarn, Eater of Worlds. Do you think the traitor legions would have turned out any differently if Argotau had survived to flee into the Eye of Terror with the rest of them? Probably not. If he survived, he might have ended up leading a warband, who might more closely adhere to his ideals, but I doubt he'd have any greater effect on the traitor legions, except maybe, and I use that key term loosely, maybe having a more positive effect on Khan the Betrayer. Do we know of any traitors from the Loyalist legions during the Heresy, aside from the Dark Angels and the White Scars? If I recall correctly, there was a Raven Guard captain who sided with the Night Lords during the Horus Heresy. I can't remember his bloody name off the top of my head, but he was in Prince of Crows if I recall correctly. But there wasn't actually that many who were documented in comparison to Loyalists from the traitor legions. which is surprising. But yeah, there were a couple at least. Everyone knows how close Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus were, and Horus was eventually every Primarch's second best friend. Are there any other particularly close Primarch friendships like that? The closest one I can think of is Horus and Jagtai Khan. Who else? Oh god. I don't really know who else would have been considered to be really close with each other. No, I don't think so. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please do. I'm pretty sure Vulcan and Ferrus Manus were pretty close, because, they both had the blacksmith mentality and respected each other for that, so I think those two are close. Aside from that, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Zero Hits asks, are there any stories or characters that were removed from 40k or fantasy lore that you think should have been kept in? The Lizardmen characters of Itsy Bitsy, Teeny Weeny, Yellow Polka and Dot Bikini, they should have remained. They were in the 5th edition Lizardmen army book. I'm being facetious here, I'm not being serious. That was very silly. Some of the stories from the Dark Imperium anthology, not the Gilliman book, the anthology from the late 90s, early 2000s. That one had a couple of short stories that you can't get on Black Library at all now, such as, oh god, was it, I've forgotten the name of the story, but it's the one where it had the Ultramarine become corrupted by Nurgle and then redeems himself at the end. It's also got the Battle of the Archaeosaurs story, which is also pretty fun. So they should be brought back, I think, yeah. Albrick asks, in relation to my question about alien pariahs, was there any other information on the reptilian Xenos? No, not really, it was very vague, sorry. How much can we put inside a Tesseract vault? Depends on the size of the Tesseract vault, I assume. It's kind of like, how long's a piece of string? Twice as long from the middle to each end. That's your answer. I mean, some Necron vaults, they tend to be treated like subspace pocket dimension things, so if that's the case with certain vaults, you could theoretically put an infinite number of items inside it, I guess? But don't quote me on that. Lucanron asks, could you consider doing a list for your preferred order of the Horus Heresy novels for people new to 40k? Oh, that's a very tall order. There was an official reading list from Black Library years ago, but they've gotten rid of that for some reason, probably because it's so convoluted. It's like a massive fucking chart. You start this short story, then you move to this short story, then you move to this short story, then you move to this novel, then you move to this anthology, then you move to this short story. It's very, very confusing at times. Honestly, it might just be easier to read them in release order, to be brutally honest. But there are fan-made charts out there. It's just be prepared because it can be very daunting. Kenju22 asks, would it be possible for a blank to undergo the process of becoming a custodian as there is no gene seed to reject? I don't think it's possible. It is hinted at in Horus Heresy Inferno that no blank has ever been a custodian or a space marine, and the reason for a space marine is due to gene seed containing the Emperor's own genetic material, which will cause a psychic backlash if implanted directly into the aspirant. But in the novel Saturnine, minor spoiler, when the custodians are fighting demons, they are described as exhibiting a glow reminiscent of the Emperor's, suggesting that they have some latent trace of the Emperor's psychic power in their very DNA. So if having gene seed, which has the tiniest amount of the Emperor's own psychic potential in it, can cause a psychic backlash to a blank to kill it, then the same process will probably cause a blank to explode, I would assume, if forced to undergo the process to become a custodian. Pentadeus asks, how far do you think Pariah's abilities go? We see them disrupt psychers and warp sorcery, but will they affect things like war energy or force weapons as well? They are known to affect force weapons, but even when a force weapon is drained of its psychic power, it still can be a very dangerous weapon because a force sword is still a sword, and if you're not prepared, you'll get stabbed with it. As for them affecting the War field, this is shown in the Beast of Rising series because they capture an Orc Weird Boy, and their presence around the Weird Boy keeps the Weird Boy from absorbing the War energy, and once all the Sisters of Silence die, it gets hit with all the War energy at once and then basically goes bang. And finally, Austin Horner asks, have there been any cases of the Watchers of the Dark assisting the modern Cypher, as they did to his counterpart on Caliban during Luthor's secession? And if so, is it possible that the Watchers are responsible for some of the impossible feats Cypher has performed, such as his escape from the Imperial dungeon? It is possible that the Watchers are helping Cypher. That is always a distinct possibility, because in the older codices he is described as whenever he comes close to death or being captured, he will be spirited away by a mysterious entity. There have been some speculations regarding what this entity is, whether it's a minor chaos god, a demon, or it could be the Watchers in the Dark. It could be the Watchers guiding Cypher in this regard. I'm not going to say yes, because I've not seen any confirmed cases myself, but that's not to say they didn't happen. There could very well be some cases out there in books I simply haven't read yet. And that concludes this edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Until next time, this has been Remlays from 40k Theories, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye!